Good morning, everyone. So what happened yesterday? Yesterday, we had a confidence vote. The reason we had a confidence vote is because Justin Trudeau wanted to force the NDP to vote against the Conservative motion to look into the We document. It's kind of complicated because the news isn't clear about this. Not at all. Not at all. The news is, it's very interesting how the news is spinning this. And we're going to look at it very shortly. But here's a meme, not a meme. And it's Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh standing side by side. And Justin's at the podium, but Jagmeet is saying, I have decided not to call an election. Yep. NDP have voted. Well, here's Laurie Goldstein. He said, NDP's Jagmeet Singh says he won't give Justin Trudeau the election he wants. In the strangest way Parliament works, that means NDP's MPs could vote with the Liberals to defeat a Conservative motion the Liberals have declared a confidence issue, thus averting a snap election. Had the Liberals not made this a confidence issue, the NDP would have voted with the Conservatives and we would have had an investigation into We. But because it was made a confidence issue and the threat of election was looming, the NDP voted with the Liberals to kill the We investigation, and it's done. That's it. Game over. Done. Sorry about your luck. You can't look into that anymore. The Parliament has spoken. Confidence of Canadians maintained, and the NDP are supporting the Liberals. Right? Right. Here's Jagmeet Singh, and he says, well, this is Brian Lilly, and he says, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says that he will not vote for the Conservative motion to continue to ask questions. Simultaneously announces that Justin Trudeau can do anything he wants, and the NDP will back the Liberals. I tweeted, I said they're the NDP or Liberal backbenchers. What did Jagmeet Singh get out of this? Probably something immaterial, like favorite considerations down the road, parliamentary considerations. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. But usually in an agreement where the NDP, like a coalition government, the leader of the other coalition gets something, and we've got a whole deputy prime minister who's also the finance minister. Maybe Jagmeet could be the finance minister. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Watch, they'll do it just because I said it. No, you don't want that. You don't want that. Because you don't want the NDP in charge of the finances. Remember what happened to Ontario? Right? Run. And shortly after that, 1995 happened, right? Canada was nearly not able to pay its debts. So we don't want that. It was a joke. Don't do that. But it doesn't seem like Jagmeet Singh got all that much for allowing the Liberals to get away clean with not investigating, giving We $1 billion after We gave Justin Trudeau's family $1 million or more, right? $1 million, 1.3 million up to 2008, right? So, man, that's really, I have lots of confidence in the government. They're definitely above board. I'm really ready for them to spend more money. Okay. Here's Pierre Poilievre, and he says, first the We scandal, yeah, then the We cover-up, okay, then the We prorogation, August, and he's like, don't worry, everyone, in August, we're going to get right back to committee when we get back. Good luck, sir. All right. And then finally, to hide the truth, Trudeau threatens a We election. We election, yes. And, they're using the pandemic to say, oh, we can't possibly go to the polls. I won't do that to Canadians, right? This is Don Martin, and he is talking about how it's Stephen Harper's fault. This whole article is trying to tie this somehow to Stephen Harper and not mentioning at all the money paid to the Trudeaus by We, the We money given to, or the money given by Trudeau to We, the controversy, the fact that We did not have a French language sector and had to subcontract that out. They're the only people in Canada who could possibly do this. And nobody wants to bring up the fact that it's Rachel Wernick, former PMO clerk, chair, Michael Wernick's sister, who's the public servant, who's the totally, arm's length public servant who recommended this. Nobody wants to talk about any of this stuff, but it's all relevant. Yes, it is. Anyway, Don Martin, there used to be a time where I thought he was good, and he's not, man. There's a whole bunch of stuff that he's purposely leaving out, and he's blaming Stephen Harper. Anyway, CTV News. Surprise, Trudeau, even more than Harper, is the master of parliamentary manipulation. There was always a faint ray of hope that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau would actually live up to his promise to do politics differently after the soul-wearying years under control freak Stephen Harper. It's Stephen Harper's fault. Cross-party cooperation, transparency, respect for Parliament, MP empowerment, and merit-based non-partisan appointments all headline the Trudeau Kumbaya playbook. And then Jody Wilson-Raybould got jettisoned from the caucus and cabinet for daring to say, I don't think that's appropriate. No DPA for you, SNC Lavalin. And, so the first Indigenous Attorney General gets jettisoned. Women of color, high-powered or high-placed cabinet ministers leaving, women leaving. Right? And, yep, this is the playbook, but the reality is very different, right, in the Trudeau years. But back to the article. But it's been 5 years of looking the other way. Bad faith attempts on, cross-party, I said that. Bad faith attempts or non-deliveries on every single count. This week, the last ray of hope went out over the hill, extinguished by the Prime Minister's Machiavellian attempt to force an election over a contrived question of confidence that, had the NDP not folded like a cheap suit, would have forced an election. An election over an opposition-demanded committee to probe the almost forgotten WE controversy and assorted other mini scandals, this on the first anniversary of the last election, during a pandemic on a throttle-up contagion path. Again, right? Using the pandemic as fear. I don't like it. It doesn't really belong in the news, right? It's an opinion piece, and that, but it's under the politics, not opinion banner here. So I don't like it. Back to this. The only rationale for Trudeau's to bait the election hook was a strong Liberal showing in the polls and a series of provincial elections where the incumbents in New Brunswick and most likely Saskatchewan and British Columbia proved that majority governments are possible even when the early votes are held while wearing masks and social distancing. Is the British Columbia election done? How did it prove anything? It's not done yet, right? I think they're going to the polls today. A majority government, right? Like, what is he talking about? Maybe I'm behind the times here. Maybe you know something I don't. Back to this. As a needlessly provocative power grab, it was absurd, galling, petty, shameless, throw the remote at the TV, infuriating. Sorry, getting carried away. But as a political calculation, if a win is all that matters, well, it's not totally stupid because a majority win was possible, if not probable. Why is he giving the Liberals all of this room? They probably would have won a majority anyway, so we might as well just keep them in power and not ask them the hard questions they desperately want to keep hidden. No. We should ask them the questions, and you haven't mentioned any of that. Anyway, he talks about Harper here. This much is for sure. Somewhere Stephen Harper is probably admiring a rival he wrote off as a political lightweight who is now eagerly leapt into the mud wrestling pit with killer instinct in his eyes. After all, it was one thing to lift a snap prorogation from the Harper playbook to shut down committee investigations into the WE scandal, and then to unleash cabinet auditioning seals that to thwart the probe when Parliament reconvened. Both were vintage Harper tactics. But to declare a mere motion forming a committee as worthy of sending Canadians to the polls during a COVID-19 crisis, now that takes the dark art of political chicanery to a whole new level. They should have called him on his bluff. Back to this. And it might have worked if Trudeau didn't have the hapless NDP pinned to an electoral waterboard with basement polling support, no money, feebly organization, or no clear platform to engage in a fair fight for the center-left vote. Yeah, I think possibly the NDP would be wiped out. Maybe not. Maybe they'd retain 10 or 12 seats. Back to this. I scroll down. If this was an issue worthy of sinking a government, you could understand the Liberal cover-up and the rush to voter judgment before evidence reaches the court of public opinion. But this was a nothing burger, more than a double helping of Kielburger with a 2-star scandal ignored at the water cooler as voters with bigger problems struggled to recall any details about WE or its founders. And so this guy doesn't help them out, right? The details are, again, I'll just mention it. We paid the Trudeaus $1.3 million at least, and probably a lot more. And Trudeau paid WE $1 billion. That's the scandal. Dawn. Back to this. For those who thought Stephen Harper was the dark lord of all controlling, win at any cost politics strategy, think again. Justin Trudeau is worse. He is worse. That's true. But this whole article paints Stephen Harper as the bad guy. So isn't that interesting? And conveniently leaves out everything Justin Trudeau and his Liberals did wrong. Everything, right? They make fun of the NDP. It makes fun of everybody but Justin Trudeau, right? Anyway, House of Commons staffer says NDP sided with the Liberals on this. Greens too, and Taberra and Wilson-Raybould. Next up, the actual vote. It passed. Here's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the federal Liberal government secured enough confidence votes today to avoid a snap pandemic election. That's how they're framing it, right? Absolutely, totally Don't mention the Conservatives' motion to investigate the We scandal failed, right? Why did that happen, right? Oh, to avoid the pandemic election. Snap pandemic election. We avoided that. But also avoided any mention of the Conservative motion to investigate We. Here's Andrew Lawton. Canada only narrowly avoided an election yesterday while the Prime Minister is the subject of numerous ethics probes. This is the CBC's top story this morning. Here it is. The race for the U.S. Senate, a few seats that could shape history. Yeah, here's 680 News, and they talk a little bit about what happened. No federal election. Liberals Trudeau survived confidence vote in Commons. Contrived confidence vote to force the NDP to vote against investigating We, right? Like they don't mention any of this. It's important, but they don't mention any of it. The showdown was over the scope and composition of a House of Commons committee that would have investigated the We charity affair and other issues the Conservatives said reek of Ottawa sending pandemic-related funding to the Liberal Friends. Earlier on Wednesday, I scroll down, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said his party would not give Trudeau a reason to send Canadians to the polls in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are voting for Canadians. We are voting against an election. We are voting for Canadians to not know the truth about We. And we're voting and we're framing it as if we're voting for you to help you out because you should be afraid to go to the polls. Thanks, Jagmeet. Back to this. Too many Canadians have been left behind in Trudeau's government's slow, confused, and issue-plagued COVID-19 pandemic response, and the Prime Minister is avoiding accountability at any cost, O'Toole said. Canada's Conservatives will continue to do the job that Canadians elected us to do. We will continue to hold Justin Trudeau and his government accountable and get the answers that Canadians deserve. It seems not even a pandemic can contain liberal entitlement and arrogance. Why would a pandemic contain that? So after getting smacked down with the We investigative committee motion, the Tories are back. Global News is saying the Tories are using a motion calling for sweeping probe into a host of issues relating to the government's handling of COVID-19. So they're not just looking at We, they're saying all of this is bad. All of it is bad. Here's a new scandal, just like, well, maybe not just like We, but here's a new scandal nonetheless. Trudeau government awarded $237 million contract to buy ventilators for COVID-19 patients. Many ex-Liberal MPs made by ex-Liberal MP company, Journal de Montreal reports, and here's the report. The Trudeau government overpaid by $100 million on ventilators and donated a contract with a former Liberal lawmaker. This is translated from French, but essentially there is a no-bid contract. The Trudeau Liberals Party has signed a $237 million contract with former Liberal MP Frank Baylis medical company without asking for a bid, paying more than $10,000 per ventilator. The Montreal-based Baylis Medical Company Incorporated has been awarded a federal contract to purchase 10,000 ventilators. In addition, ventilators that have never been approved in any jurisdiction, the Health Ministry memo said. The Trudeau government reports that the price of Baylis's unapproved ventilators has exceeded the price of its approved competitors from Mediatronic, spending a total of $100 million more than necessary. Good job, Justin Trudeau and crew, right? Like that, but we're never going to investigate it because if you investigate it, then Justin Trudeau will make it a confidence issue and force the NDP to vote against investigating it because we don't want to go to an election right now, guys. We're on your side. We're fighting for you. Just don't ask to see those documents because, Justin Trudeau won't let me ask. AstraZeneca, sorry, I got that wrong. Shares turn negative after Brazilian health authority says volunteer in COVID vaccine study dies. It lost 1%. It lost 1%. And it's all about the money. I think this is funny. Like the person died and the stock market tanked for this company. AstraZeneca shares turned negative Wednesday after a Brazilian health authority, Anvisa, said a volunteer in its coronavirus vaccine study died. The Federal University of São Paulo, which is helping coordinate late-stage trials of Brazil separately, said that the volunteer was Brazilian, according to Reuters. Shares of AstraZeneca, a frontrunner in the COVID-19 vaccine race, gave up a slight gain after the news broke. Shares were down by 1% in early afternoon trading. Right? Like, a person dies and the shares go down by 1%. That seems like a small reaction. And the fact that this is the front runner should be concerning. It's concerning to me. Here's another COVID-related story. Brett Wilson says, Calgary's super spreader wedding celebration linked to 49 cases of COVID-19. Why is the AHS media hiding where the wedding was held? Every school or hospital has an outbreak is named. What wedding? Where? 49 cases out of 63? My speculation here is there was an Irish person, I saw a video yesterday talking about how there were all these deaths attributed to COVID-19. So they got the list of deaths and they started calling the people who had lost someone and said, did your relative die of COVID-19? What happened? Like, we want to know. And all of them said no. They said that was the secondary. And so they revised the numbers. And I'm sorry, I don't have the link to this. I may have saved it. I'll look for it and I'll put it up if it's available, if I can find it again. But they revised the numbers down and they released 100. She said between this date and this date, only 100 people have died of COVID-19 that haven't been confirmed by us. And now we're going to start going through that list. So that was the last I heard about that. But I think this is very similar, right? It's quite convenient to report about these numbers and oops, golly gee, be wrong, right? Like, oh goodness, best of intentions and all that, right? Like, the news can't be held to a standard that is impossible, right? If you didn't know the news was fake, then how can you possibly fact check yourself, right? And so is that valid? Well, if you don't know where the wedding took place, you should be upfront with that. And, maybe do investigative reporting. That's what the news used to be like, right? Like, maybe look into it. I do my best to do investigative reporting. And if I'm wrong, I try and correct myself, because there is some validity to that, because I don't know if I'm wrong, right? Because the world is a never-changing place, and sometimes new information comes to light, blah, 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 blah. So it's unfortunate that, that the world is such, but it is such. And when newspapers report things, again, best of intentions, if they get called out, they should be able to produce a reasonable, like, this is why we printed this is why we think this. And that's why I provide my links. So yesterday as well, there was a social gathering at Queen's Park. It was live streamed. Here's Maxime Bernier speaking at the event. Rocco Galati, and I know I'm probably saying his name wrong, and a whole bunch of other people were speaking at this event as well. It looks like they got a good turnout. I don't like crowds, and I don't like Toronto. So yeah, sorry everyone. And I had lots of stuff to do yesterday, so I couldn't make it out to this one. But here's Mr. Bernier.
Baljeet is our candidate in Toronto Centre here downtown. Just vote for your values and send a strong message to the Trudeau government that we don't want any lockdown. We want our life back. We want our freedom back. That's why we are fighting together. And I want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting politicians like Randy that is fighting for you. And I feel it. We are not alone. With you and a lot of Canadians all across the country, the silent majority is with us right now. So let's go.
We want our rights back. We want our freedoms back. I think that articulates it well. And the election is on the 26th, so they're right at the end of their by-election campaign. And no snap election was called yesterday, right? That would have been demoralizing. I think that would have been just like, oh man. But there are a lot of people who feel that way. I feel like there's a lot of people who have had their businesses closed with no recourse. How do you plan? I think that there's a lot of demoralization. If you can't go on a vacation, or if the vacation you're going on, you have to be wearing a mask on the plane and a mask at your holiday destination, mask on the beach, can't have all sorts of restrictions, etc. Is that much of a vacation? Like, how long did the Spanish flu permanently change the way humans lived and worked and played and forever? Like, I don't think that happened. And so I'm not tolerating this new normal BS. I'm sorry. I'm not. They're selling something I'm not interested in buying. Here's something that this has been like this for a while, the water advisories. And I called this guy this morning. And I actually spoke with Moses West, the inventor of this guy. I spoke with him. And he was a very nice man. So thank you for speaking with me this morning, Moses. And I said to him, how much does one of your systems cost? And he said $50,000. And it makes 550 liters of water, potable water a day. And like, the idea of this is it creates potable water. It's just like a dehumidifier, but it creates potable water. And here's some pictures, right? And I thought, how much is one of these? So as I was talking to him, I said, how much to get this delivered to, like, a First Nations community that you could drive into or fly into potentially, like, that would be able to fly into your area. And he said, well, give or take $50,000. And I said, $50,000, that's it? So there are 60 currently water watches in effect, right? Here's the water watches. And I thought, if we used 61, So if we use, I did 60 just for nice, easy, but that'd be an extra $50,000. 50,000 times 60 is $3 million. $3 million to have 200 gallons of water created daily. Is that something that's beneficial? And I wanted to see if that was like in line with what's going on. So this drinking water advisory has been in effect in this First Nations community for 12 months, since February 2019, and then February 2015, February 15th, 2020, they're talking about the assessment on and repair of the treatment plant. And down here it says completion of a new water treatment system can take 3 to 4 years on average to complete. So these systems produce potable water, drinkable water, fresh water that doesn't need to go through a treatment system. It can just be distributed to communities. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm certainly not saying that I can fix all 60 water advisories with $3 million. Certainly not. But is this something that we should be investigating? This could be run with grid power or on a generator. And if a generator is all that's required, all that you need basically is electricity, and that's how much it takes per kilowatt hour to run. So you can run it 24 hours a day, produce your water, distribute your water. I mean, I'm sure you could even, I don't know if you could create a plant, like if you've got water being generated, if you can like plumb it. I don't know what the limits of this thing are. But as far as helping, this seems like a no-brainer, right? And yet I haven't heard anybody. I asked him, I said, has anybody from the Canadian government called you? And I've talked to him, like him. And he said, nobody from the Canadian government has called me. And I said, okay, well, how much would it cost? Could I buy one and like take it up to a First Nations, or would you deliver it there for me? And he said, well, it's $50,000 generally with delivery on a flatbed. And I said, all right, that's wonderful. I mean, and that's ballpark, right? So don't take that as a quote. You'd have to get some logistics and all that. So it would be around there. But even so, at twice the price, isn't that a deal? I feel like $3 million is not a whole lot in the era of COVID, right? Could we buy these and ship them out there and call it COVID spending? Who knows? I mean, they're willing to call all sorts of other things COVID spending, so why not call this? All right, moving into the other, there's 4 more stories. There's just a couple more things happening in Canadian news, so might as well talk about them too. Here's the Huawei motion, because the other one resulted in a defeat, and they had to try. Like that's the function of the government. But I wish that the Tories would tell people the stakes, because they are being led around by the nose about the way the Liberals are messaging on this, on pretty much everything, right? The we investigations got turned into the Conservatives want a snap election in order to hold us accountable, right? It got lost, and they did that on purpose. And so when the communication is just terrible, and the communication is terrible because the media makes it terrible as one. And that's a main one. The media reports poorly, lies by omission, or outright inserts things like the Don Martin piece we read earlier. Like, that's not a responsible piece, in my opinion. It leaves out a lot of important information, and it blames Stephen Harper, which is just unnecessary. You don't even need to bring him into this, right? Like, you could hold Trudeau accountable, and that's what the press used to do, and they don't anymore. So that's a problem. The press is not on the Conservative side. But the Conservatives need to message directly to the people, and they need to engage a bit. Like, if the Liberals are willing to threaten an election, be ready to fight an election and say, yeah, let's do it. These are the things that we want to find out, and hammer them on it. They don't ever. Here's another one, right? Like Huawei. People don't understand the stakes. And Trudeau's answer is we're listening to our experts, and the experts are taking whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's been like 5 years. Every other Five Eyes member has banned Huawei. Canada's in a fight with China. Diplomatic fight, blah, 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 has been for years now. Meng Wanzhou is in jail in Vancouver, locked in her house, and 2 Michaels are in Chinese prison in China, and standoff, etc. And so here's a motion that Trudeau doesn't want to deal with.
Mr. Speaker, our allies have realized that Huawei cannot be part of their 5G future. This government promised a decision before the last election. Right. This week, Great Britain announced that it found critical weaknesses in Huawei's 5G infrastructure. Last week, it was Germany tightening restrictions on Huawei. Once again, under this Prime Minister, Canada isn't back, it's hanging back and letting all our allies get the job done. Mr. Speaker, will this Prime Minister finally rise today, get tough, and ban Huawei from Canadian 5G networks?
Well, Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canada will always put the security of its citizens and of its infrastructures first and foremost. We have done that every step of the way. We deeply respect the work of our experts and intelligence services and are working with them to make the right decision. We will listen to their recommendations.
People eat this stuff up. They love it. And they just because they don't pay attention. They're like, oh, well, that sounds reasonable. That sounds reasonable. Why are the conservatives so angry all the time? Be quiet, Karen. RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki to address violence in southwestern Nova Scotia. Here's a response. Brenda, while you're at it, could you spare a minute or two and address SNC Lavalin and We Charity corruption? Thanks, Canadians. Yeah. So the fishery thing I was talking about the other day, again, this is something that is being used to further drive a wedge of division. I think that there's a lot more than meets the eye, and the media is doing exactly the same thing to this that they're doing to the We scandal, that they're doing to the vote yesterday. It's all the same. It's all the same dance. And it works. It works because people think that's reasonable, right? The amount of people who don't understand business as well, and I mean, I understand it takes a long time to get what business is if you're trained to be an employee. Right? And a lot of our schooling system is training people to be an employee, not to think outside the box and do things, but to listen to somebody and do what you're told. Right? And that's not great. And so Trudeau says people are innovative. Trudeau says restaurants can adapt to single-use plastic ban. So the fact that it's a green initiative, it makes the products more expensive, right? Green bamboo single-use utensils, right, are more than the plastic counterparts and create more waste. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't seem to matter, right? So, the Trudeau government's plan and the Ford government's plan too is to have the businesses carry the cost of the transition to the green economy. And the problem with that is the more fences, the more barriers to businesses being successful, and more expensive things like that are a barrier to businesses being successful, because you can't then funnel that money back into the business. You can't give raises. You can't buy better goods if you're a restaurant, right? Like, you've got to budget your money, and if more money is going to containers, et cetera, less money is going to other things potentially, right? Especially when you're getting started, because that's when that balancing act matters, right? Once you're established, then those things are a little less impactful, but they still shave things off the bottom line and still make difficult unnecessarily make it difficult, right? And that means it's not as business friendly an environment, and that matters. It does matter. So anyway, I think that Trudeau's tone deaf, but this is nothing new, right? Like, this is nothing new from him. And the censoring of the Hunter Biden story should concern us all. This is National Post. I've been following this. I've seen this. I thought, man, if this bears out, this is going to be an interesting thing. Tonight's going to be an interesting debate. Trump's debating Biden tonight, and they've got a mute button for Trump and Biden apparently, and man, it's going to be interesting. But apparently this Hunter thing, the bigger story, and this article talks about it, is the censoring of the story from Facebook and Twitter. That's much more concerning, really, than the Hunter Biden story itself, right? Like the fact that Facebook and Twitter went absolutely nuclear on it. What? Right? It's kind of like the We scandal. Nobody wants to talk about the contents of the We scandal, right? What We scandal? It's a nothing burger and a half, 2-star scandal. Right, sure, except that it's not the whole scandal, right? Not the whole scandal, not by a lot. And same here, right? Like the Hunter Biden story is a big story. The fact that Facebook and Twitter banned it from their platforms, that's even bigger and way more concerning. All right, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful